was on already. Val, Val, Val Carr. Can you guys come down here? Yeah. I just like to tell them. I just like to tell them they can't. Where's happening? No. Hello, everybody. Wow, that was loud. Thank you for coming. Welcome to Trey. If this is your first time, welcome. We are so thankful and grateful that you're here. If you've been here before, welcome back. You already know we love you, but I'll tell you again, we love you. Tonight, we are excited to have another Trey Talk with Mr. Bob Sutton, who is the president and CEO of Avera. I had the honor of meeting Bob the other day and got to sit with him and ask him some questions, and I'm really excited to hear the rest of his story. I've heard high things, and so I'm stoked. Like I said, I'm so thankful you guys are here, and welcome. If you haven't caught on, it is our Christmas party. I don't dress like this all the time, but I actually do quite enjoy this cardigan. So I'm going to open up in prayer, and then I'm going to invite Bob up, and he will get started. So, Father God, we just thank you for tonight. Father, we thank you for just making these connections happen, Father God. We know that you divinely set things up way before we even think of them, Lord. So we just thank you for tonight. We thank you for the wisdom that Bob's going to share. And we just are so appreciative of everything that's happening tonight, Father God. New friendships and new relationships, Lord. So we love you, we thank you, and we praise you, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right, Bob.
Thank you so much. I love that because at Avera we start every single meeting we have with a prayer. So I feel right at home here tonight. What a fantastic facility. What a great night to be here, and I really appreciate the invitation. I have this book with me. All of those little tabs are little things that I have saved over years to share with all of you tonight. So I promise I will stay within the time frame and open it up for questions. I've been told that that questions will be part of the deal at the end. So let me share a few things that I wanted to just really celebrate with all of you tonight. And I have to tell you, there are so many worse places that all of you could be on a Friday night, and you're here. And that is worth celebrating right there, because I will tell you, and there are people in this room that know, oh, thanks, man. There are people in this room that have known me for most of my life. They know that when I was about your age, the chances of me being here doing this were pretty darn slim. And so thanks and congratulations for what you're doing. So I want to share with you a little bit about the organization that I work for. And I promise it's not a commercial, although we'll hire any of you that want a job. So, but I've worked for Avera at the end of this month for 10 years. And Avera is a healthcare ministry right here based in Sioux Falls. 72,000 square miles, 86 counties across 5 states, 37 hospitals, a bunch of long-term care facilities, blah, blah, blah. I could go on and on. We have 19,000 employees. And what I'm most proud about Avera is it's the largest female-founded organization in the Midwest. 2 orders of religious women, the Benedictine sisters from Yankton and the Presentation sisters from Aberdeen, came here from Switzerland and Ireland, respectively, in the late 1800s to start teaching school for Native American kids. And a diphtheria outbreak happened, sort of like COVID happened, and we needed health care. Teaching wasn't as high a priority, So they said, we're just going to switch our mission and our direction, and they became healthcare providers. And so we just celebrated 125 years of being here. But the important part is this isn't a ministry of these two orders of women. This is a ministry of Jesus Christ. This is a ministry rooted in the gospel. So when I talk about Avera, and we do a timeline for all of our new employees, Avera is a 2,000-year-old organization. It started with Christ. That's the ministry that we are entrusted to, the ministry and the teachings of the gospel of Jesus Christ every single day, in every single encounter, in all that we do to take care of people. And I'm awfully proud of that. And awfully proud of the fact that on any given night, we have about 750 people in our hospitals. 1,100 people live with us in long-term care facilities across our footprint. 360 people tonight, right now, are lying in a hospice bed at the end of their life, dying with dignity, dying with a glorious end to whatever their life has been. And they're sharing that with us and with our staff. 5,500 people a day visit our clinics. We have 1,000 people that are taken care of in home care, and then 85,000 people whose lives we insure through our insurance plan. So we touch a lot of people in this little corner of the world, and I'm awfully proud of our ministry and the work that we do. But tonight I'm going to share with you a journey, my journey personally, not necessarily about what I do for a living, but how it's affected what I do for a living. Not about Avera specifically, but about my faith journey, and also about a program called Leaders in Ministry. We have a program for our leaders. We select 15 to 20 leaders every year. We're now on class number 21 of this group that gets together 2 days a month for 9 months. And you come together and learn about the ministry and the mission, not just of Avera, but the ministry of Christ. And it is absolutely awesome. And tonight, when I talk about my faith journey has not certainly culminated, but really grew as part of the Leaders in Ministry program. And so all of these little tabs are things I wrote down when I was in Leaders in Ministry that I'm going to share with you, or at least some of them. Not all, but probably 5 or 6 of them that I'm going to share with you. So we're going to go on a journey here for about the next 35 minutes, and I hope that I can keep your attention. That table full of desserts in there with the huge dude with a sleeveless sweater, I mean, you can get by him and somebody distract him and go get more desserts if you have to. But I want to tell you a little bit about me. 6 of 7 kids. We were all 7 of us were born actually right here at Avera McKinnon Hospital. All 7 kids here. My father passed away when I was 5 years old. There were still 6 of the 7 of us living at home. Mom and Dad both had an 8th grade education. So they were both grew up in rural areas, and you went through 8th grade, and then you got a job to help support the family, or you went to work on a farm, or you did whatever it was that you did. I moved a lot as a kid. I talk about that often. I had 7 different houses before I was in 7th grade. And as a matter of fact, I met Doug Bourbon when I was in 8th grade, so that would have been my 8th house. And actually, where I lived when I met Doug Bourbon was in a motel, and that's not an exaggeration. It was the second motel that I had lived in my life. But despite all of those moves, the one constant we had in our life was church. I grew up Lutheran. We attended church. It was one of those things that brought us together. And I actually met Doug through church. That was the first place I met him. But as a kid, I can't even remember every bedroom that I had and every house that we lived in, but I can tell you every single church that I attended along the way. And my mother was 39 years old when my father passed away, or 37 years old, when my father passed away at age 45. She had 6 kids at home, 8th grade education, and she was a custodian. So my mother turned to lots of different things to try to cope with that and get through that. So sometimes it was just us going to church. I love my mother's been gone 23 years, and I miss her every single day. And if you've still got your parents, make sure you tell them that you love them, because Dad's been gone now for many years. coming up on 50 next year, and mom for in 1999, so 23 years. And there's not a day goes by I don't wish that I could see my mother and tell her that I love her. Then, throughout those moves, one thing that impacted me was when I moved from Sioux Falls to Watertown and then ultimately to Hill City, where I graduated from high school, 9 miles from Mount Rushmore, a little town in the middle of the Black Hills. If you haven't been there, you should go visit because it's a great place. But my high school football coach was my Lutheran pastor. Now, that doesn't happen everywhere. I understand that. But Pastor Larry Peterson, he's an amazing guy. He's ministered and done great work on the reservations in western South Dakota. He's in his 80s and now lives at Outlaw Ranch out in the middle of the Black Hills and ministers there. But Larry's an amazing guy. And he convinced me what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do was be a Lutheran pastor. Now, my friends chuckle at that because Steve Schultz was one of my college roommates, and I'm sure he's thinking, really? You were going to be a Lutheran pastor? That was never going to happen. But I didn't go that route. I thought about it. I thought that was where it was going to end up for me. But life happened. And what really happened was college. And that's why I'm so amazed that you're here. Whether you're working or you're taking classes or you're going to school full time, I'm not kidding. I would have never done this. You are incredible that you are here and that you're involved in Trey Ministries and that you're doing these things and spending time with people that think like you, that you can celebrate with and that you can celebrate your faith with. Because this isn't what I was thinking about. I grew up in the church. I fell away from the church. It was the last thing from my mind on a Friday night when I was 20, 21, 22, 23 years old, was getting to get together with like-minded people of faith and spending time. So church fell away, and quite frankly, every bit of moral, all of my morals fell away. That wasn't important to me. I was doing things, spending time with people that I shouldn't have been, doing things that I shouldn't have been doing, and quite frankly, I'm a bit ashamed of that. So I take you on my journey with me to the first of the two things I want to share with you from my leaders in ministry experience, because each of these tie back to a period in my life. So the first one was this. And keep in mind, I shared with you, this is a program that's 2 days a week, or 2 days a month for 9 months, September through May, and then you do a little celebration and you leave. But you spend time with this cohort, much like all of you do here, but 15 or 20 people really growing in your faith. This second session of Leaders in Ministry was a growing experience. We grew as a group. We became more familiar with each other, more comfortable and willing to share. The curriculum was deeper, more theology. The study of the Bible was insightful, but the contextual and non-contextual issue made some in the room uncomfortable. Sister Mary Thomas's Finding God in All Things was excellent. Praying from the Psalms was a great way to start the morning, and understanding the types of psalms, hymns, wisdom, thanksgiving, lament was eye-opening. So those were my notes from October 10th of 2014 when I went through this session. But I also want to share with you one other note from that time, because this shows the struggle that you have throughout life. It wasn't just a struggle that I had then. We learned about the Psalms. We read Psalms. We talked about them. We learned about what they meant. And it doesn't matter what faith you come from or where your roots are, they're different. I grew up Lutheran. I converted to Catholic as an adult, and not that many years ago. And the difference, I don't spend a lot of time in the Psalms, like really getting to know the Psalms. And then they said, okay, you have 15 minutes. You have to write a psalm and present it to the group. So what are you going to write? You're going to write one of those glorious celebratory psalms? You're going to write one of those really sad? So I went with let's go with really sad. So here's my psalm, Bob Sutton's psalm. Lord, I am in need of your mercy. My thoughts and my acts are not always in accordance with your teaching, and for that I am heartily sorry. Your word resonates with me, but often I ignore your teaching. Hear my cry as I ask for your direction and guidance. Your time is precious, and I ask only for a small piece of it to help me become a better person. Heavenly Father, I often feel the stress and weight of issues that I have not asked you to assist with. Each time I ask, you are there for me, and I now ask you to provide me with the knowledge and courage to engage with you in all facets of my life. Your word leads all people to a better life, and for that I am grateful. The fact that you have saved a sinner such as me is a testament to your love for me. When I need direction, guide my way. When I need assistance, provide the hand of help. When I cannot go on, carry me. I was the CEO of this organization when I wrote this. This was something that I had written in my mind and thought about since I was 21 years old. But I hadn't really gotten around to ever saying I was not a very good person for quite a period of time of my life. I was not a very good person. And the folks running Leaders in Ministry said, write something down and come back. And you have a very short period of time to write it. That's what I came up with. And I read that over and over because it will be something that's part of me for the rest of my life. It doesn't matter how many times I pray. It doesn't matter how many times I celebrate. It doesn't matter how many times I go to confession. I still believe that I have a lot of repenting to do for the things that I did wrong. So quickly after undergraduate at the Harvard of the Midwest in Vermilion, I was married, 22 years old. Oh, there's a junior college in Brookings too, I know that. But there is the Harvard of the Midwest in Vermilion. So married, 22 years old, still fortunate, and I thank God every single day to be married to this woman today, almost 32 years later. But we were a split family. She was Catholic, I was Lutheran. And we went to church. She and I went to Mass every Sunday together. And then I would go get communion at the Lutheran church because I couldn't take communion at the Catholic church. So I would go get my communion at the Lutheran church, and life went on. And then a few years into, after we were married, I had the chance to go on the Avera Health board. And it was very interesting because my wife never said, you've got to change, you need to convert. But I got a chance to see this faith in action in this organization. I didn't work at Avera. I was living in Pierre. We lived in Pierre for 26 years. And I got a chance to sit on this board with these incredible women. Women with 2, 3, 4 master's degrees. When people doubt the business acumen of the sisters that sponsor Avera Health, you would be sorely mistaken. They are brilliant. They are educated. They know business. And they keep me in line. And that alone, I will assure you, is a task. But I sat there, and they do this so strategically. The board of Avera Health, just like it was then and just as it is today, you meet in the boardroom, and there's a seating arrangement. And the board consists of 6 sisters, 3 lay people, so businesswomen or businessmen or, some educators, sometimes farmers, and then 3 physicians. So it gives you an idea. There might be 1 or 2 others that you can add in there too, but that gives you an idea. So you get it, there's 12, right? So the seating chart is sister, sinner, sister, sinner. So they make sure you're surrounded by them at all times. If you're not voting the right way on something, you're hearing it in both ears. And like I said, they are amazing. But that's by design. They want you immersed in what you're doing in this faith journey, because being on that board is not just about making business decisions and going over financials and audit reports. All of those things are important. It's about connecting with people who can't take care of themselves. And that's the ministry that I get to go to work in every day. So I discerned whether or not I should convert for a very long time. We were married 7 years. We had our first child, and then the second one came 2 years later. So our kids are 22 and 25 now, and still it wasn't enough. I'd go to Mass, but I would still go over to the Lutheran church for my communion. And then I found myself traveling. And when I was traveling for work, if I was in another city or in another town, I just got more comfortable going to Catholic church. And I'm like, what am I doing? I'm betraying everything that I believe in. But I really wasn't. So I went through the process, and RCIA, the Rite of Catholic Initiation for Adults. It's a year-long program. You go one night a week. You learn all this stuff. It's virtually catechism or confirmation for adults, and was converted and got baptized, or not baptized, excuse me, but confirmed. You only get baptized once, but confirmed with the same time as our daughter, which was extremely special for me. And I was still sitting on the Avera Health Board at this time, but I was called to go to work there. Literally called. And a calling is much different than somebody like, oh, this is what I want to do, or somebody picks up the phone and says, you really should do this, or why don't you do this? I felt this call, like a pastor feels a call, or like a sister feels a call to enter religious life, or you might feel a call in your life to come here to Trey Ministries. You may feel a call to go on a mission trip and make a difference in the lives of people who can't take care of themselves. I felt this pull, like some way, shape, or form. I am going to leave a job that I loved, a job that I absolutely love. There's a man here in the audience whose father founded the organization that I worked for, and I loved that job. I told people I had the best job in the state of South Dakota, and yet I was drawn to go to work for this healthcare ministry. So I did it. I quit. I walked away from this job that I thought would be the one. I'm 54 years old, that I thought I'd work at until I was 65 or 70 and retire and go to Arizona and play golf in the winters and come back up here in the summer. And then, like God does, my life was disrupted because I knew nothing about healthcare. I had never worked in healthcare. I'd never worked in a hospital. I didn't have a degree. My degree is in political science and philosophy. If you don't want to get a job, major in those two things. But it's worked out okay. So God has been with me in many ways. So I remember very well, my office was at Avera St. Mary's in Pierre, one of the Avera hospitals. And one thing about Avera facilities, if you've ever been in them, is they almost always have a chapel of some sort, a meditation room or a chapel. At St. Mary's, it used to be a Benedictine convent. So there is a full-blown church inside the long-term care, the nursing home, on the campus. Well, I started my job on January 1st, 2013. So as I said, I'm coming up here on 10 years with this organization. I had nothing to do. I left this beautiful office. It had stone like this, like that. I love stacked stone. That's what it had on my wall. I had a back then that was big, 55-inch flat panel on the wall. I could watch stuff on TV. It had a little conference table in my office. I loved my office. It was a beautiful view for a tiny former hospital room in a 90-year-old, 85-year-old hospital building in the old part of the hospital in Pierre. I mean, I walk in there, I set my box on the desk, and I go, what was I thinking? So what did I do? I went to that chapel every day. Every day I went to that chapel and I just prayed over and over. What did I do? Lord, what is your plan for me? What are you doing? What am I like to think I am smarter than this. Did I really make this bad of a decision? It was a step backwards in my mind. It was a step backwards in all the things that don't matter. It was a step backwards in status. My staff from the South Dakota Community Foundation, where I'd worked before, came over to my office. My assistant, literally, I'll never forget it. I still give her a little grief about it. Cried. She's like, I can't believe this is your new office. And she starts crying and walks out the door. It's like, oh, good Lord, I've got to go pray again. I've already been in that chapel 6 times today, and now I have to go pray again. So I'm going to share with you again part of my journey from the Leaders in Ministry program, because this ties back. And it's so interesting how many things in your life you think back on, And when it's happening to you right now, you might think it doesn't matter, and then it all becomes so clear to you when you're in a place where you can spiritually relate to what has happened your entire life. And I'm not expecting it will happen to you in the next year or 2 or 3. It might, and I hope it does, but it might happen to you 30 years from now. And your eyes will be opened, and your heart will be open to things you never thought of. So now we're at November 14th of 2014 at this Leaders in Ministry program. So keep in mind, I was in this place, like, what am I doing here, and why am I in this office and in this job? And I just want to go back to my old job, except somebody else already has it. And I can't, like, take her out. That would be wrong. God would not like that. So Broomtree, which is Broomtree Retreat Center down near Irene, South Dakota, is where we go for this Leaders in Ministry program. Broomtree was very educational for me this session. Sister Marielle's lessons on the early church and the video on Judaism were exceptionally good. See, we learn about all different faiths. We learn about Islam. We learn about Judaism. We compare. We talk. It's a fully immersive program. I also really appreciated the teaching, Sister Sharon Ann teaching us how to pray the Lectio Divina. The Lectio Divina is a specific way of praying, and it's fascinating if you ever get a chance to do it. But this is the part I wanted to share with you. I needed Broomtree this week. Personally and professionally, I needed the focus and the reminder that no matter how crazy things may seem, no matter how far out of order things may seem, God is with me and in charge. I need to take time to remind myself of this daily. I need this, and my family and coworkers deserve it. I was in a place in my life, sitting in this weird little office, not really sure what my job was. The job that I got was creator. Remember, I was a board member, so all of a sudden I work for this organization. No real job description. I mean, there ended up being one, but it was just sort of like, let's make this transition. I knew what I was doing in my old job. I'd been there for over a decade, and I was uncomfortable. But you know what's important? That's where Jesus met people. Jesus met people where they didn't want to be. Jesus, hospitals, clinics, that's not Disney World. Nobody wants it. You do not get up in the morning. Now, most of you are too young, but the ones who aren't will understand. You don't get up and say, I get to have a colonoscopy today. That is awesome. Or, I can't wait for my mammogram. That'll be fun. Let's go do that. Nobody wants to show up in an emergency room. Nobody wants to go into a clinic. Why do you go into a clinic? Because you're sick. It's like one notch above a dentist. Who wants to go there? I'm sorry if your folks are dentists or if you're going to be one. Nobody loves them. Clinics and dentist offices and hospitals are not Disney World. They're just not, period. But you meet people where they don't want to be. And if you can make people feel like their experience is good where they don't want to be, think about how rewarding that is. Think about that. That's the challenge we have each and every day. So, I'm working one day, and the CEO, the person that was running this particular hospital at the time, just didn't work out. It just wasn't the right fit. So I get this call, and it's sort of strange. They're like, Bob, you've lived in Pierre for a long time. The person that's been the CEO at the hospital, that's probably not going to work out. You know anybody who might want to be the CEO? And you know anybody that could step in? And I was like, well, that office is nicer than mine. And I'm really just down the hall. And without even me saying this, like thinking about it or knowing what I was doing, God said, would you ever let me do that? I had never set foot in a hospital. I wasn't a hospital administrator. I mean, you got to know certain things to be a hospital administrator, right? There was kind of a chuckle on the other end of the phone from the person who had my job that I have now at that time. He's like, what do you know about running hospitals? Legitimate point. Just thought I'd throw it out there. Thank you for the boost of confidence, my friend. And then a couple days later, I happened to be in Sioux Falls, and I was in that office, and we were having this conversation. And he said, let's give this deal a shot. That was on a Friday. On Monday, I was the CEO of Avera St. Mary's Hospital in Pierce, South Dakota. Day 2 on that job. So all of a sudden, I went from, what am I doing? And why am I doing this? And I need to pray 6, 7, 8 times a day in the chapel because I quite frankly didn't have a lot else to do, to this is an awesome responsibility. I've been called to do this, and we got to do it right. So we got my leadership team, our leadership team together the next day, Tuesday morning. They're all looking at me. I've known these people all the time I've lived in Pierre. Many of them have worked there for years. I'm looking at all of them going, any of you could run this hospital. And they're looking at me like, there's not a snowball's chance you can run this hospital. And we were in the middle of a great conversation about what we needed to do. What was this going to look like? And we get a call. And I'm called away from my first administrative council meeting that I ever attended to go to a crisis that was happening in our OB department. Now, in Catholic healthcare, OB is a big deal. Delivery of children, taking care of mothers, all of that is a big deal. It's a big deal anywhere, but it's a big deal in Catholic healthcare. We were going to lose the mother, quite frankly. We were going to lose the baby. That was a foregone conclusion. It was only 19 weeks, and there's a lot of protocols you have to go through. So we had a neonatologist on the phone, and we had experts all over, and we're going through this incredibly difficult 23-year-old mother of a 3-year-old now having the second baby. If we didn't do this right, we were going to lose them both. There's no way the 19-week fetus was going to be viable outside of the womb, and it was devastating. And we're in this room, and there's all these people that are MDs and super smart people, and okay, how are we going to approach this? She's 20, 30 feet away in this hospital room with her 23-year-old husband holding her hand. And I'll never forget, one of the nurses' aides in OB, or one of the nurses, in OB sat down and she said, I know all of you are doctors and you're experts and you're specialists, and there were people on the phone and joining us. We didn't have video at that time. And she said, but how about if we do this? And the room just literally went quiet. And remember, this is day 2 on this job. Day 2. And I've been told by the members of that administrative council, they've been in that hospital 30 years, and they never had a situation anywhere near this one. This was my second day on the job. Well, it was brilliant. What was going to happen was brilliant. And the mother lived. The baby was delivered and was able to get baptized. And the baby died later that day. And that obituary will be in the upper left-hand corner of my desk drawer for the rest of my life. But the mom lived. And that 3-year-old now has a mother and a father. And I hope now, later on in life, more siblings and more kids that those parents can love. But that one person said something. In the chaos, it was just so clear that was the right answer. Fast forward, I'm back at Broomtree, and I'm thinking about this, and I'm writing about this. And here's what it was. December 12th of 2014. This session gave me tremendous insight on decision making. The right people need to be engaged, and leaders are not always the right people. It's a mantra I have carried with me since the day that happened. Don't have all people around the table that have all these degrees and all these things because they're the experts. And don't have people all around the table that think exactly the way you do, because everybody's eyes are going to be looking at the same thing. And yet there's something that was so obvious and so, none of this was easy, but it was the right thing to do, and we did it that day. And this mother is alive as a result of it. And that day probably will be one of the most eye-opening things that I've ever been involved with, because no matter what jobs I've had, and I'm now It's hard to believe. For me, 30 years into a career, I had about a 10-year career in one business, 10-year career. I was a lobbyist in both Washington, D.C. and in Pierre for the county government, for the oil industry, and for the banking industry. Now, I know I need to pay penance many times over for those things, but then I went into this foundation work, and now I've been in healthcare at the end of this month, 10 years. That day opened my eyes, and it's a day that I will never forget what I learned that day. So this organization that I work for now, Avera Health, it impacts individuals and communities, but it's more than healthcare. Healthcare is part of what we do, and as I mentioned, it's not a place that anyone wants to be, but we are there, and especially for those people who are most in need of God's mercy, people who are sick, people who can't take care of themselves. And if any of you or any of your family members have ever battled an illness or watched people at the end of life and watch how they're cared for and how special things happen at the end of life, I have never worked in something that was life and death. That's why that situation with that mother and baby, I used to sit around at a conference table with my staff, and they'd be like, oh my gosh, this is going on. We have this hair's on fire. I know I don't have any hair, but when my hair could be on fire, we'd be running around scrambling. It's like, this is crisis top DEFCON 5 or whatever it is. Let's get this deal figured out. And I would sit down, and the first thing I would say was, there's nothing we do here that's life and death. There is nothing we do here that is life and death. And everybody go, oh, that's true, just because this person's angry or we missed a deadline or whatever. Now, every single day, not just me, but leaders across this healthcare ministry deal with life and death. Every single day. Almost every decision that we make has to do with life and death. And you know who's responsible for that? God. So if we don't turn this over to God every day in the decisions that we make, we're stewards of that incredible power every day. But that's an awesome responsibility. I'm not patting myself on the back and saying I have awesome responsibility. I'm granted that awesome responsibility and leading thousands of other people who take it very seriously every single day. But we're there to take care of the people who are in most need of God's mercy. That's what we get up to do every single day. People who can't take care of themselves. And it's about the common good. We don't talk a lot about the common good anymore. What's the common good mean? Well, the definition will tell you that the common good is realized when economic, political, and social conditions ensure protection for the fundamental rights of all people. That doesn't happen every day. We don't succeed at that every day, but we take it very seriously, that we need to make that a priority. And it's awesome to be able to go to work at a place where you can do that. It's also a challenge every single day because I don't think I'm worthy. I don't think I'm worthy of this responsibility, and I don't think I'm worthy of what we've been granted by God to have the responsibility to do. So, the Lord's Prayer has always been incredibly important to me, and you're going to laugh at this because it's so juvenile and so funny. But I always called the Lord's Prayer my prayer because remember I said my dad died when I was 5 years old. So, how's the Lord's Prayer start? Our Father, who art in heaven. I always thought that was about my dad. Not kidding. I know how funny that sounds and how weird that is, but I always thought this was our prayer. Like, they pray this prayer every Sunday because our dad died. And I thought that's what we did. Our Father who art in heaven. So that was Orm Sutton. That was my dad's name, Orman Sutton. I'm like, it is so cool that everyone in our church prays for my dad with our family every single day. But one of the things within the Lord's Prayer, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You know what? We think we're in control. We think we have the power. We think we're going to determine what we're going to do for a living or what job we're going to take or where we're going to live or who we're going to be friends with or what we're going to turn out like. Somebody else determines that. Thy will be done. So, back to Broomtree, and the note that I made on this topic is very short. We had to write a personal mission statement. And of course, what am I going to do? I'm going to go back to the Lord's Prayer. That's my prayer, man. I'm going to take that prayer. That's my personal prayer. And this was my personal mission statement that I also keep in my upper left-hand drawer. Anything worth anything, if you're ever going to rob my office, take the upper left-hand drawer. It's all where all the good stuff is. Because I believe God's will is done on earth each day, my purpose is to live my life in accordance with his will. Because I believe God's will is done on earth each day, my purpose is to live my life in accordance with his will. So how do we live? How do we all live? How do we actually spend our lives? How are we perceived? Do we lead by example? You being here, that's awesome. Do you lead by example? Are you a light to other people? That's a question we have to ask ourselves. And how we conduct ourselves, do we model the behaviors that God would want us modeling for other people? Others are watching all the time. It's one of the most unique things that I never would have imagined in this job, in this town. I don't go anywhere where someone that works for Avera is not. It doesn't matter if it's Hy-Vee. It doesn't matter if it's Minerva's. It doesn't matter if it's Rosie's Cafe over in West Sioux. It doesn't matter if it's a concert. It doesn't matter if it's church. There is nowhere I go where one of our 19,000 employees isn't there. And they're always watching. Now, I'm okay with that. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. Do I say things I shouldn't say? More often than I would like. But am I modeling the behaviors that I believe in, that I should be modeling to others? Do we ask God for guidance? Do we do that? Do we ask God for guidance? Enough. I have a really simple prayer. When I'm going into a tough meeting or a tough week or a tough couple days, I pray over and over and over, very simply. Calm me, comfort me, guide me. Calm me. I have a notorious temper. And I try not to get angry. But it's the hardest thing. It's been a demon of mine since I was this big and threw things against the wall when I was angry. Calm me, comfort me. Help me find comfort before I do or say something that I shouldn't. And then guide me. I can't do this without guidance from somebody much more, something. It isn't even somebody, something. This incredible, the kingdom of God is at hand. I need that right now. And it helps me so often. Call me, comfort me, guide me. I'm not a very eloquent speaker. I'm not a very eloquent prayer. I'm probably one of the most basic prayer. When your whole entire prayer is 6 words, most people would say, that's not very sophisticated. And I say, well, my mom and dad only had 8th grade education. What do you expect from me? And I went to high school, West River. I mean, that alone. My cell number is 222-2223 because I have a lot of West River friends and they can only remember 2 numbers. So, I mean, there's a lot of things in my life that are pretty simple. So this has been my journey. This is my journey, and I'm still on it. And I've got a long way to go in this journey. I've got a lot to learn. I've got a lot of things that I have to somehow in my own mind and in my heart process. But I'm comfortable that the people that we can help every day and the people that are so vulnerable when they present themselves to us and they're looking, will I be in this ministry my whole life? I don't know. For the rest of my professional career, I don't know. I've been foolish enough to walk away from the greatest job I could have ever had into a job that makes me feel like I make a difference in the lives of thousands of people every day. Who knows what's next? It's not really for me to decide. Someone else will decide that. I may be called to do something else. I may be called to that golf course in Scottsdale early and go play golf and come back up here in the summertime. But I want to share one more thing with all of you, and then I'll certainly open it up for questions. Ask yourselves these questions tonight, over the weekend, throughout the winter, throughout your life. When I enter a room, do I bring more peace? I used to be chaos. I used to cause chaos. I used to like to agitate. I used to like to disrupt. But what we really should be doing is when we enter a room, do we bring peace? What is the fruit of my presence? What is the fruit of my presence? Do I bring anything by being in front of you tonight? Or is this not worth it for you? And that's in every situation. We're not always going to be on. We're not always going to be on our best behavior. We're not always going to be who we know we should be. But what is the fruit of my presence wherever I am, and am I present there? And are other people getting something from that? Or am I actually not bringing anything? Do I bring God's presence into the world, into the room, into the situation? Or am I just a naysayer that brings down the mood, that lowers the common denominator to the discussion? Am I bringing down what we're solving for and what we're here to do? And then last but not least, finding God in all things does not mean only in situations that are pleasant. It's finding God in all things. You know when God's there for us the most? When we're most uncomfortable. When we are most uncomfortable and we don't want to be there, that's when God is most present. And we just have to remember that. When we're nervous, when we're anxious, when we're not comfortable, with who we are or what we should be, that's when God's there. So there are three things. I told you my prayers. My prayers are simple. Call me, comfort me, guide me. But depending on the situation, the other thing I ask of God is this. If I need help, but I feel pretty comfortable with where I'm going, I just need God to light the path for me. Light the path. Put the light out there, and I will follow that light. If it's a little more intense than that, if I need more, I need the light, but I need God's hand on my shoulder, not letting go and helping me make it right down that narrow path. Because I would wander even if the light was out there, but God's going to keep me straight. And if it's really difficult on those super tough days and those super tough meetings, carry me. You're strong. God's strong enough to do that. He can carry any of us through anything that we face, but we have to let him or her. Remember, I work for religious sisters. They call God her all the time. I'm okay with that. But she or he need to carry us. And we need to be willing to succumb to that and say, I can't do this. And I do those things every single day. I think we have all the answers. Just because they put a title on your door or you have a degree, that's not where the answers come from. And so God bless all of you. Thank you for listening to me tonight. Thank you for letting me share. And I wish you, every single one of you, a Merry Christmas and blessings into the new year. So thank you. I would certainly answer any questions that you might have. Doug. And that has stayed true for the last 40 years as well. That's a great question. I'm going to repeat it for the folks that are listening. But what steps or decisions did I make along the way that helped me get to where I am? And I will say part of it was my faith life. There's no question that there was always a belief. But there's this song that some of you may know, and I truly don't even know the name of it. I don't know who sings it. But it's a song that has high hopes is what it's called. It's like, high hopes of living. Da, 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 da. You know that song? I always believed that I was called to do something, and people helped me do that. Teachers, pastors, friends, and they were there for me. They didn't need to be. They were, Doug, when you said I wasn't anything special, it was worse than that. I would have been someone that was a kid that was very close to falling through the cracks. Doug knows that. Steve knows that. There were times when it was very touch and go, and yet people were always there to lift me up. And then, without question, the single greatest decision that I've ever made in my life, I'm leaving faith out of this because that's obviously an incredibly important part. I fell in love with and married a woman who I couldn't pray enough every single day to thank God for what she has given to me. Every day. Being around someone who is 100% supportive of you, even when you don't deserve it. Somebody who believes in you, someone who wants to spend their life with you, and when you're struggling, and when they're struggling, that you're there for each other. I mean, I think who you choose to spend your life with is one of the greatest decisions that you can ever make, and make it wisely. And sometimes it isn't the right one. Sometimes you make the wrong decision, and sometimes they make the wrong decision. But Doug, I've been blessed in many ways, but people who believed in me, and a spouse that I'm blessed that she will even have me in her life, and I thank God for her every day. Yes, cat. Great sweater. It's got a cat on it. Yeah. Yeah, it's got like 3 cats on it. Yeah, it was made for you. I actually am going to an ugly sweater dinner after this, and it's in my car, and it has a llama on it. It's red with a llama. And if this wasn't being live streamed, I would have worn it in here today, but that would have gotten way too weird for people in, like, whatever. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. You know, that's a really good question. How do you prepare for a calling that you don't know how to anticipate? How do you prepare for something that you don't anticipate? And for me, that answer is really simple, and it makes some people very nervous. You don't know when the call's coming, and you don't know what the call's going to be, but don't say no. Have a heart that's open to whatever is coming your way. There is no way I would be where I am today if I had said, I can't run a hospital. I never believed that. I ran the South Dakota Bankers Association for about 6 years during my career. And during the interview, they said, would you like to make an opening comment? These are bank presidents from all over South Dakota. I'm in my 20s. And I said, well, I just want to tell you, I know how to use an ATM and how to balance my checkbook. That's what I know about banking. But if you don't give me this job, I'm just telling you, you're not going to find anyone that will work harder and learn about banking more than I will. Be open to whatever call might come your way. If it feels right and you believe in yourself and you're willing to educate yourself, learn, and work to make that happen. So I think when you put yourself into a box, into a silo, and say, well, I've got a degree in social work, so I can't do anything but social work. When you say, I got a degree in economics, that's what I'm going to do. There are incredible people with degrees in economics who are pastors, who are out leading mission groups, who are out running hospitals. I'm an accountant. You're not an accountant. Your degree is an accountant. You can be whatever your heart is open to be. That's the advice. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Thank you for the question. And go wild. That's a sweet throwback jersey. So the question is, was there ever a point, you say you're open to something, but that you're like, I've never done this before. So the question is, was there ever a time when you felt like, yeah, this is what I should be doing? I'm paraphrasing your question, Connor. Yeah. What happens for me is when you find yourself in that situation, then it's reaffirmed. And it's not just reaffirmed by, well, I've made it through my 90-day review, so I must be doing okay. It's not reaffirmed by someone else not firing you. It's reaffirmed by, keeping your job. I oftentimes hear people say, we need help so bad, we'll hire anyone who can fog a mirror. Well, that's not a real self-confidence booster for people you're out trying to hire, right? But for me, there was always something. And I can think of whatever role I was in, that a situation, it might not be right away, but it reaffirmed that I was in the right place. I took this job on June 18th of 2018, so just about 5 years ago, this role that I have now. And I don't know if it was ever, like right away anything happened, but there was no question in my mind that it was reaffirmed that I was where I needed to be, and I was in a place where I could handle what I was doing. On March 10th, when the first COVID case came to South Dakota, that changed the whole game. It changed all of your lives. You might have been in high school at the time, you might have been in college at the time, you might have been working on jobs. Our lives changed. And no one had been through it before. So it didn't matter. There aren't many hospital administrators who were around in 1918 when the Spanish flu came through. So all of a sudden, somebody who had no background in healthcare was just as experienced with this as everyone who had been in healthcare for 40 years. Difference maker. That was God reaffirming that I was in the right place at that time and that I was called to be there. And I can go through, and there were always something like that happened. That you might have doubts in your mind. There was never a doubt after that. I might not be the greatest healthcare CEO that anyone's ever met. I might not be the greatest healthcare CEO in this town. And I'm okay with that. I'm where I'm supposed to be with the organization that I'm supposed to be with right now. Yes. I know, I didn't do I butchered that, didn't I? I'm sorry. Oh, you're in for it now. Now you get the whole, this is full immersion Bob Sutton, and I'm sorry to all of you. It's his fault right here. So So the question is, did you fall in? What was the first part of the question? Sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's interesting because patience is not a strong point of mine. I'm extremely impatient. OCD and impatient, really bad combination. And I am both. But I never thought, I never had a doubt that it was going to happen. I just wasn't in control of when it was going to happen. So I know that sounds all fluffy, but I'm going to tell you a really quick story. My wife, Lori, was teaching elementary school in Tyndall, South Dakota, Bonham School District, Tyndall, South Dakota, teaching first grade. I was getting my master's degree at USD. We had gotten married the summer before. I was driving back and forth. I was teaching Government 100 at USD, so I was a grad assistant in the public administration department. 160 kids at 9 o'clock in the morning who did not want to be there. You know, you can relate. One of those classes you have to take. And so Tyndall, little town, but Tyndall happens to be a county seat. So this is the part you just got to bear with me for a second. I show up in Tyndall, and I'm starting to look for jobs because I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to need a job. Well, I had seen you looked in the newspaper. The newspaper, that's these things that people open up and read. I know many of you have never touched one, but, and that's not condescending. I just get it. I still read the Wall Street Journal in paper form every single day, and I love the feel of newsprint in my hand. Some people, that freaks them out. But I'm reading the Argus Leader, and there's an advertisement for the executive director of the South Dakota Association of County Officials. So this is a God thing. There's a moral to this story. So that sounds like a cool job. That fits my degree in public administration, kind of a political junkie, and I wanted to live in Pierre, which very few people ever say out loud. So I wanted to live in Pierre. I walk to the courthouse. I throw on the one sport coat I have. Almost every college kid has a blue sport coat, khaki pants, my one pair of dress shoes, and I walk into the Bonham County Courthouse. And I walk up and I say to the county auditor, "Hi, this is my name." Her name was May Rochadel. I'll still see her the rest of my life. I see her standing behind the counter. And here's this ad in the paper. Can you tell me a little bit about this? She said, "I can't, but the Register of Deeds across the hall, there's virtually 3 people that work. I mean, courthouse have lots of people working in them, but 3 elected officials: treasurer, auditor, Register of Deeds. The Register of Deeds, Elton Rakusik, who's a great guy, still around. You can find him. He knows a little bit about this. Go talk to him." I walk up to the counter. He's sitting back there working. I said, "Mr. Rakusik, my name is Bob Sutton. Could I talk to you about this job?" He said, "Well, are you going to come back here and sit and have a cup of coffee with me?" I said, "Sure." Walk around the counter, sit there. We sit there for 2 hours. Don't really talk about anything to do with the job. He says, "I think you should apply for this position. You've been in Pierre. You've interned during the legislative session. That's an important part of this role." Okay, I go home that night and tell Lori, my wife, what I did, and she's like, "Well, you really think that's going to help you get this job for this statewide association?" I said, "I have no idea." But he told me to apply, so I did. This is no computer deal. This was typing in these days, and you typed it out, folded it up, put it in the mail, and dropped it off, and it ended up at the office. I get a letter back 2 weeks later. "You have an interview. Would you please show up in Lewis and Clark A at the Ramcota in Pierre, South Dakota on this date to interview for the executive director job?" I'm like, I gotta get a tie. I gotta go interview for a job. I don't have enough money hardly to put gas in the car to drive up to Pierre. I walk in, and this is signed by, I know I'm name dropping here. Nobody knows these people but me. Verna Satter, County Auditor, Gerald County, Wessington Springs, South Dakota. I walk in the room. There's 6 or 8 people on this board sitting there. This is pre-internet. You couldn't look things up online. You weren't looking stuff up to find out who was on the board. There are 66 counties in South Dakota. 64 of them have courthouses. Tyndall is one of them. Each of them have 3 county officials. The chair of the search committee was Elton Rakusik. the Register of Deeds in Bonham, South Dakota, where my wife was in her first teaching job, making $14,800 a year teaching first grade in Tyndall Elementary. And he said to me, "You're 23 years old and you were wearing brown wingtips. That shows a maturity level so far above." What he didn't know is they were the only pair of shoes I could afford because no one was wearing brown wingtips at the time. He said, "I knew at that time you were not only getting an interview, but I was going to do everything I could to get you this job." True story. And I thank God for Elton Rakusik as well. So is that luck? I don't think so. Some way, some shape or form, God said, "You should walk to the Tyndall courthouse and see what you can find out about this." I got the job, and I've had incredible opportunities ever since. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the chance to be here. And again, I think it's awesome what happens here and what you're all doing being a part of this. So thanks so much for having me.